Yeah. So let's get to the visuals and so I can do some talking. So for everyone who's listening, I hope you've gotten some concepts, but these will all become clear when you see. So there's 11 things up on YouTube. So go back to my YouTube channel, Angel Borrelli Pitching, and you'll be able to see in the teaching moment section of this podcast. You'll be able to go and hear this part of the podcast so that you can see the visuals while you're listening, and it'll be great. So Larry, for you, go ahead and open up the first email attachment that I sent you.
Got it.
Okay, great. And this is the start of as I said, this is where we look at the start of the stride. So the stride is right here at the top of the knee lift. And you have to, if you're working with the camera, go up, go down, go up so you can actually see where is the pitcher's top. So that's the top of the knee lift. And now go ahead and open up number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is an important thing to understand here because this is where the stride is headed. When I tell pitchers we're working on your stride, I always give them understanding first, and then I give them some feeling second so that they can get a sense of what's happening. But one of the most important things to teach understanding is to show them where are you actually supposed to be headed? So when you start to lower that knee, where are you actually headed? You're actually headed to this position. And the position of, if you notice on this is called stride foot contact. And his foot is completely down. And his arms are completely up at 90 degrees. He's got a perfect angle to his pitching shoulder. His glove arm is perfect. And if you look at where his belt is, he's basically sideways. The little tiny bit of rotation you see is sometimes just because it's a tightness thing, but he didn't turn into that landing. That's just a little tiny bit of rotation. But he's in such perfect position. He's got plenty of room to still develop and initiate the velocity. So this is where the stride has to end up. If a pitcher understands the destination, then when he creates his movement, it will make more sense to him. So the top of the knee lift to this landing position and the timing of the upper arms with the lower body is just like the timing of a jumping jack. The foot arrives, the arms arrive. It's actually a half jack. And if you have your pitchers do jumping jacks and say, did you have to think about that? Have them do a full jumping jack. Did you have to think about the timing? No. Okay, now do a half jack. They'll come up to a half jack and the timing's perfect. Say, did you have to think about that? They'll say no. And that's because the shoulder muscle and the hip muscles, which have sort of the same name and they work in the same plane, they know how to do this together. It's kind of an innate timing. So it's really it's helpful when the pitcher knows if he doesn't block that innate timing, he's going to be able to do a better job. So now I want you to go to number 3. And this is actually the muscle that creates the stride. So for everyone, this is on the side of the body. It's on the side of the hip. And we're actually looking at it from the rear. And what you can notice here is that it is on the very top of the butt muscle. And it's in some of the fibers, as you could see at the top, wrap around to the front. So basically, the way you want to teach this is you want to teach it as if it's on the direct side of the hip. That's how high up it is. So when people are confused about how do you move sideways, this muscle is designed to move the center of mass sideways. It's called the gluteus medius for any of you who want to look it up. And that is the muscle that pushes the pitcher sideways. So when people go, well, is it the foot? Well, is it the knee? Well, is it the front leg? No. The same muscle on the front leg is actually lifting the leg sideways, but the other function it has is to move the center of mass sideways when the foot is down. So this is the location of the muscle. And if you put your hand on it and you just push your pitcher, push him from there, he'll feel it working. Just have him stand with his feet a foot apart, have him put all his weight in his right leg if he's a righty, and just put your hand there and tell him, don't move. And then you push him push him from this area, he'll go, oh, and he'll feel it. And that's where he needs to initiate the stride from. Isn't that kind of a cool thing to know, Larry?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And I've done it before, not knowing what the heck I was doing, but I've done something like that before. It's cool.
Beautiful. Yes. Well, I always say this, and you're one of the reasons why I know this to be true. You coaches are more genius than you know. And the pitchers are geniuses as well. When both of you are vibing in your genius plane, great things can happen. So I am not surprised. And I know many of your pitchers out there or coaches will be going, oh, yeah. And they'll be opening up ideas and maybe recognizing that they knew more than they thought they knew. And notice when you do a jumping jack and you jump outward and just stop, that's actually the position your back leg should be in as you're striding out. You're riding the inside of that back leg to get to that position that you might be in a jumping jack. The leg is lengthening out. So any kind of crazy thing you do in the back isn't going to work. Now, I want to show you a way that I teach feel. And of course, all the pictures in these videos have given me permission to use them. And none of them were taken with the use in mind of it's for a podcast. This is real time, real educational stuff that I actually was really doing with them. So open up number 4, and the listeners will be able to see it. These are walking lunges up a hill, which the guys call the hill from hell. This thing is so steep, I cannot tell you. So I want the pitcher to know that when he lands in his stride and when he gets to his stride, the thing that he has to know is what is his next thing going to be? He's going to turn on that leg, but that leg better be in position so he can do what you're seeing Joe do. And this is Joe who was on the show a few times back. He's going up the hill and he's committing himself to his front leg. The weight is right over the leg. You'll see his knee is right over his ankle. He's in a great position so that if his front leg lands in this configuration, because remember, that's how it's going to land, he's going to turn and he needs to end up here so he can deliver the ball. And so I take them up the hill first. So then the next thing is open up the next video. So now he's doing side lunges downhill so that he can actually get a sense of how it feels to go sideways, but I'm taking him downhill, which is always a different thing for a pitcher to process because he's going downhill. Remember, flat and downhill are completely different. So you can believe before he lifts that right leg off the ground, you can believe he is sure he's in his left hip. And that is exactly where a pitcher has to get his weight. So this is an exercise that teaches feel. And I can tell you, you would be amazed at how, when I was demonstrating this, I could not believe how sore my hip got or how I could feel my hip after like 5 or 6 of them. And I train all the time. It's a great drill. So, okay, now let's go into a little 5-step drill. This is a progression. Probably it could be too elementary for you, Larry, for your guys, but you'll get some ideas from it. But it's a way that I change the landing position. And this was a pitcher that had a pretty good stride, but was landing a little bit too far to where he was leaning backwards. That's another sign when you're standing behind the rubber and you see that he's leaning towards his butt side and you're like, why is he doing that? Well, he's leaning back because his other foot might be his lead foot might be too far forward. And remember, Larry, you like to call it west to east, east to west. You're going to get sideways motion in the body during the stride if the person is going out in a crooked fashion, because the body, if he sticks his leg too far one way in front during the stride, he's going to lean back on that to create balance so he doesn't fall. And that's just a natural way that the body works to keep us up on our feet. So go to the next one. That's number 6 for you, Larry, and it's step 1 in the progression. So here you go. So here is the pitcher putting his foot into the position to create where it's going to go. heel to heel. He strides out. Then he turns the back foot for me to test, do we like this? And there's the purple little thing I put down, and we decided I had a few things. He says, put that down. And what he wanted to do, he said, okay, I'm seeing there's some writing on it and I'm seeing that center. I want to aim for the center. So what we did is you put the heel into your pitcher's heel. It's not behind it. He steps out. Then you test it by turning and see how his feet are in a configuration. And I did correct him because I wanted that rear foot to turn with the shoelaces being more straight. And that's one of the errors you'll see. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I want that back foot to look completely straight. So I'm looking dead on at those shoelaces. But and I like showing video where there's an error because they don't do things perfectly. So this is how you test. Now, if we had seen that foot way over to his right, you would not be able to see the back foot. And that's another way for you coaches to do. If you're filming from behind the catcher, stop him at landing. And if you can't see the rear foot, then he's not going to be in this position. And remember what has to happen next. I mean, what happens after the landing, that back foot had to turn this back leg and had to get him square. If he's square and that back foot is over, let's say far to his left, sometimes you see the foot, but it's way over on the other side of the rubber. He's going to have to pull that foot off to complete his rotation. You will never see this configuration. This is lunging position. It's walking position, space between the legs. You can see both feet all day long, every day. It's the way humans move. It is absolutely the most efficient way to create the base for what you're going to do in pitching. Now, does that make sense, that little test?
Perfect. This is great. Absolutely.
So step 2, now so we put the little thing down and now he's doing a slide step throw. So what he's doing is, okay, we got you marked. You know where you're supposed to be. We're using that cue. Now go ahead and throw. So now I'm testing to see, does it make sense? And sometimes you'll see that you want to change it a little bit. You know, there's always a standard deviation, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, but you still have to follow the rules. So that's what you see when you get him going. You mark the direction, you test it, and then you start the slide step throwing flat ground. Now, the next thing that you do is, now we're on step 3. Now I'm going to have him add a knee lift, touch down, and go. Now, what am I doing? I'm starting at the beginning of the stride now, but I don't want any funky front leg. So because I'm teaching no bells and whistles, I'm going to have him come up to the top of his knee lift. I'm going to have him stay, tap, and go. And that's going to be the next step to the drill. Now, does that make sense, Larry?
Yeah, this is good. Yep, this is going to help.
Yeah. So now I've got him doing the tapping drill on the mound because everything changes. And what I want you to notice on this drill is that he is hesitating at the top of his knee lift because I want to be sure he's loaded on that rear leg so he's not falling. If he's loaded on that rear leg, like you will see, then he can stay up there and do whatever he wants. But if he is not loaded on that hip, his stride will occur when the body feels it's off balance, and then he has to go forward. He should go forward when he decides to go forward. And see, sometimes when you have inefficient motion, you're not in control. You're going because you're off balance, and the body said, okay, it's time to go. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. 100%.
Yeah. And you see that all the time. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, okay, let's go to the next video we have here. And now we have the proof is in the pudding. So now here we go. And I've got him pretending to tap. I don't know if you guys use the word pretend. I'm a female. I go, now pretend to tap. But I call it the pretend to tap drill. So I get him tapping. Then I say, now pretend you're going to tap, but don't tap. And then you're going to see a little different front leg. It's going to and they all do it differently. Like sometimes I say to a guy who gets his leg too far out, no, I want you to tap right next to where the bow of your shoelaces attaches. But he, as you notice, he actually comes a little bit in front, but it didn't throw anything off. And how did I know that? Because of his landing. And he loved this whole thing. In fact, he said this was one of the best instructional sessions he ever had because he was giving him a chance to feel things. And I know absolutely when he's in a game, it's not going to look like this possibly. But you know what? You start with something that makes sense. Now, the last slide, I mentioned loading. Okay, so this last slide is another drill that I do. If you get a pitcher who cannot load on his back hip, so he's falling and it's out of control, this is the way I have them throw. I have them start with their foot across. And as you're noticing when he does this, notice that his back leg is completely loaded. And actually, his hip, that gluteus medius, is a little bit pushed south. And here's the deal about it. This is probably boring information, but that muscle works the best when it starts with a little pre-stretch of about 15 degrees. So when you notice, I have him crossing over because you see how it pushes his hip a little bit southward towards the outfield. That way, you know, he is totally not only loaded, but he's actually pre-stretching that gluteus medius so that it can give him nice, clean movement. And there we have it.
Now, hey, Angel, that last slide I didn't get from you. I don't see it, but I'm envisioning what you're doing. Is he taking his left foot and lightly crossing it over his right
he's
foot?
actually got the toe. Actually, Wendell, could you send him the 11th video as soon as...
Sure thing, Angel. No worries.
Everybody, Wendell is the most fantastic editor in the world, who I finally have a reason to bring him on the air. And he's learning how to pitch, by the way. So, Wendell, if you get a chance, could you send that to Larry? Because it's real important. And I can't believe I goofed up on that.
No, it's fine. I'm envisioning it because
you know what? If you didn't get it, Wendell didn't get it either, but I think he got it. Did you get it, Wendell?
Yeah, I got it. And I just forwarded it to you, Larry.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there's Wendell proving that he's there. And all of you probably know that these podcasts require tons of editing, but don't edit this stuff out, Wendell. I want to make you a star.
Okay, this can stay in.
You'll be getting that in a second. But yes, that's what he's doing. So what he's doing is, if a pitcher can't load that back hip, let's say as he's bringing the leg up, he's doing what you guys call drifting. Picture the worst drifting problem you've ever seen. The pitcher starts to lift up, and he's not having a low knee lift. He's having a high one. But because of his range of motion, flexibility, whatever, he wasn't on the back leg to begin with. Let's say his knee lift is halfway up, and he starts coming off his back leg. So we call it drifting, right? And let's think of the worst, most serious problem. That's a problem for the stride, right? Because the stride's going to start at the top of the knee lift. He's in the middle of his stride when he gets to the top. Do you see how crazy that could be for timing? So the crossover drill, which you'll see in a second, but
yeah, I see it. I'm watching it.
Okay. He is loading his back hip, and see how it's a little pre-stretched there, Larry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that is going to provide for a great feeling for him of where he needs to be. So you have him do this, and then you go back to the tapping drill so that and of course, one of my favorite things to do is, you have him get to the top of his knee lift, and you say, stay, go. And they really, if they can't stay, then they're not loaded. So this teaches feel for the pitcher who doesn't know and understand his rear leg and how to load the hip. Remember, the rear hip is the hip of the only leg on the ground. I cannot stress this enough. It's the funniest thing I say, and it's the most realistic thing I say. The rear leg is the only leg on the ground. If you're not in control of it, or it's controlling you because you're off balance, it affects the stride, which affects rotation, which affects the way the arm comes through, which affects the velocity, which affects the location.
No doubt. Oh, this is good. Really good stuff.
Okay, so now I think you had a question about the way the foot touches down.
Yeah, you already addressed the direction, and because I think that was huge. I think that's really important. But the other thing would be, like, you see the guys that, again, you see them do it at all different levels. What about guys that heel strike, and then if that's not the optimal way to land, is it the entire foot at the same time? Is it slightly the ball of the foot? What's ideal, and what are the risks, or what are the things that can go wrong by your heel being the first thing that's down?
Yes. Well, the way we love it, and in fact, one of the videos you sent me of the guy who rotates too soon with his back hip has the most perfect landing. The way we love it is that the foot goes down flat. We love that because the second that hits, think of all the energy that's transferred up through all the surface connections of that foot. That's cool. And it also means the pitcher had committed enough weight to the front leg where his foot could actually be underneath him. Okay, which is how we are when we're walking or when we're running. All right. Now, that's ideal. How many times have I seen that? I could probably count on two hands since 1995. Second way, ball of the foot, because that's kind of a common way to land. And that's also an acceptable landing that usually doesn't affect the motion. But that is stride foot contact. That is when you don't wait till the foot goes flat to call it the end of the stride. Because the minute he touches down, he's going to start rotating his back hip and his pitching arm. And that's what the beginning of the rotational phase is. What we don't want is landing on the heel. Now, everybody picture this. Picture yourself on the steepest hill ever, and you're walking down. You're going to land heel first. Why? Because you're trying to slow yourself down. And we don't want to slow down. In the pitching motion, you want to be slow and controlled at the beginning. And when the foot lands, boom, you're turning with all the speed you can, because guess what? That's the speed phase. The beginning of the speed phase is the rotation. So not only are you, one, slowing down as you land, you are jarring the entire motion. It's like I always say, driving into the wall without putting on the brakes. Transitioning between the phases is critical. Understanding the role of the phase. People think, and I know this is taught a lot, and this is why the little gadgets and things people have that try to get the pitcher to be more powerful in his stride, you've got to be careful. We want intensity that's in the pitcher's head, but we need control so he transitions into his landing, and then boom, it's go time. Because guess what? The minute the foot lands, you've got the energy of the earth pushing through you. Not much of the foot's in contact with the ground when it's on the heel, right?
Correct.
Plus, he's still positioning that foot as he's turning, because remember, as soon as he touches down, no matter with what part of the foot, he's going to turn. So that's the second part. He's unstable. Third, the reason why the foot doesn't move is because when you're during this crazy motion where you're actually rotating over the front leg and going forward over the front leg, the most stable foot, and you don't want it to move, is the flat foot, or once it lands in the ball, you immediately then you're putting the foot down. Your weight over the foot is what keeps your foot from spinning. If you're on the heel or the toe, that's another bad thing. And the ball of the foot is different than the toe. Heel or toe, you're going to get spinning action. And probably if you're landing incorrectly, you're going to be spinning in the direction of your front leg, which means you're going to spin out and land on the ground. That's why I've always looked at pitchers' follow-throughs to understand how they're controlling their power and their motion, because if they're spinning, you know the direction of the force. And guess what? The force needs to be going forward, not sideways. And so anytime you take a part of your foot, just walk on your heels for a few steps today, everybody, and see how weird that is. And walk on your toes and see how weird that is. And then appreciate how great it is when your foot's under you and you actually transfer weight thoroughly through that foot. So the heel landing is something we don't want to see, but that usually occurs because the pitcher's stride, he's sticking his front leg out and looking for the ground. And so something's off with that. And of course, we hopefully have learned from this podcast that When you see that, back it up to the top of his knee lift. Look at what he's doing. Look at how he descends, how he starts that stride. And, if you see a problem there, look and see if the way he lifts his knee to the top of the knee lift is a problem. So there's something going on in the back end. But Larry, one of the things I find most amazing about all of this is here we are. The job is to throw the ball, and all these things getting in the way of it happen before the front foot even lands.
Right.
I mean, don't you think that, like for me, I swear it's in the 90% range. The errors that occur in pitching start before the front foot even lands.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And it's the simplest part of the motion, in my opinion.
Yep, I believe so.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, do you have any other questions that might be burning questions that other coaches might be wondering about?
One more.
Okay.
I think we spoke about it a little bit. I had a guy in the minor leagues that we really paid attention to it, and I've always kind of kept an eye on it since then. But when they lift, the pitcher lifts his legs to his hands, so to speak, or he gets to the top of his leg lift and he starts towards the plate. You see some guys. I've seen one guy in the big leagues that is successful and that doesn't. That's Tim Hudson. But they sit. They're real deep bend in their back leg. They really, really sit. And I think I don't know if it's being taught a lot lately, but you sure see it a lot. And I think maybe because of the emphasis on, velocity and whatnot. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. And I just want maybe some clarification to maybe let me know that I think I'm on the right track. I try to avoid it. I try to avoid our guys doing it, to avoid them sitting deep. I don't want their first move, what I call their first move, to be down. I want their first move to be down towards the plate, down towards the catcher, not a deep sit.
Yes. Okay. Well, once again, your intuitions, and you've got a good eye, and I can explain it to you. Now, I was working actually with one of the ace pitchers when Hudson was pitching, and I said, and it's in writing somewhere, I said, that guy is going to have a hip injury or an inner thigh injury, which in fact he did. Okay. Sinking too low. Now, here's the deal. This is natural. In sports, our job to train sport performance is to control what the body wants to do or can do to make it do just what you want it to do. So when a body moves sideways, so think of a basketball player. He's up tall, and then let's say he gets to the player. He's up tall when he's running, and then he gets to the player to defend him. He's going to always lower his center of mass a little bit. In life, when we move sideways, like if I just said to you, I want you to take 5 steps sideways, like you're protecting or defending or something, you're going to lower your center of mass. That's natural because when you bend your knee slightly, you've got more muscles working around the knee joint. You've got the front muscles working. You've got the hamstrings on. You are actually creating more tension around a joint, so you're actually more stable. But anytime someone doesn't have control over some natural motions, it gets excessive. So the pitcher's going sideways. So he's going to lower a little bit. That's why you always see a little tiny bit of lowering and a little bend in the standing leg. But if he doesn't know, he's not strong enough. He's not strong enough, or he's not aware enough. Gravity will pull you all the way down. Now, in that position, Larry, here's a few things that are happening. One, the reason why we have a downward hill is so the pitcher is up, and he's got this advantage where the ball's coming downward into the hitter. When you lower yourself too low as a pitcher, you're creating a level playing field for you and the pitcher. So you're taking away a huge mechanical advantage. That's number one. Number two, if you do that, you have to be in your heel, because when you lower, your knee goes too far where you're going to use the north-south. We're talking about a righty, north, south, west, east. If a righty lowers too much, his knee goes too far east, and his butt has to go west or he's going to fall. So we got east-west balance, okay? Now he's moving sideways like we learned today how to do, and he is going to land with his leg too low to the ground. when he turns, because he's too low to the ground, he's already giving way to gravity. Gravity is now having a party. It got you when you were lowering. It's continuing to keep you low. You land, it pulls you down even more. And now you can't get over your front leg. Now you are transferring energy that's sinking into the ground instead of going up. And you probably cannot, you have to be looking like you're sitting in a chair almost when you deliver the ball, because right now your body has given into gravity, which is now having a party, pulling you further down, and you're doing the best you can to turn and throw. You're going to be all arm in the sense of that you're not transferring energy. And also, you were a little bit off balance at the beginning. So that pitcher has the right idea to lower, but he went into his heel, lowered too much. You have to keep the weight in the long bones of the foot, which is right underneath your shoelaces. He has to be shifting backwards. He gets the wrong height. His stride's the wrong height. His landing's the wrong height. Gravity's pulling him down. He's got some energy going up, and there it is. That's the effect of sinking too far. And in a sense of just when I look at an athlete who's doing some performance, he is not controlling a part of his body, which is easy to not control because gravity's always pulling us down, but he's not letting the action we want to happen. In other words, his body's doing that naturally. Part of sports training is to not have some natural things happen so other things can happen, because muscles do all their actions at one time. When we're controlling it and training it, which is what sports performance is about, when you're doing that, you're omitting and teaching him, don't give into this so you can do this. He's giving into something and it's controlling his whole motion. So he lost control in the first few seconds, but it's easy to understand because that's what's happening. Gravity loves pulling you downward. Okay. And now I haven't seen this picture, or I didn't see his full motion. Does he do any of those things that I mentioned?
No, I've just seen in the past.
I gotcha.
I don't particularly have anybody. I had a guy a couple years ago that did it. It was constantly something that was a key for him, or something that we kind of monitored to make sure that he didn't, sit too deep. That his first move wasn't down, that it was more down the hill. So it's something that I've always kind of kept an eye out for, and was hopefully on the right track, which it sounds like I was. So that's good.
Yeah, now you have the reasons for it.